Note, this version of Final Fantasy XVI was a special version made for media to experience, and contents may differ from the final version. Final Fantasy XVI is a big departure for the series, even more than the already divisive Final Fantasy XV was so many years ago. A heavier focus on smooth, action-focused combat, and a full revitalization of the way the game approaches its boss fights are just some of the changes that were clearly on display during a hands-on preview screen rant attended. What's clear above all else is that FF16 is unafraid of change. It's a bold, decidedly innovative spin on a formula that's still been preserved with its familiar concepts and characterizations. Final Fantasy XVI definitely appears to be putting a strong focus on its protagonist, Clive Rossfield. A party of AI-controlled companions will sometimes be available, including his faithful companion, a wolf named Torgal. Otherwise, players focus on using Clive and his abilities to navigate sections of the map and to fight incoming enemies. That said, there was some promise in the game's other characters. The section played during the Final Fantasy XVI hands-on preview introduced Cid, and some revelations about his past played out in an unexpected and meaningful manner. Character interactions felt nuanced and the graphics displaying them looked gorgeous, showcasing a wide range of emotive expressions and movements that were supplemented by some great voice acting. What Final Fantasy XVI's combat will be like. A basic rundown of the story's premise was provided prior to the preview, which allowed for the story beats to make more sense during play. Essentially, Final Fantasy XVI is a medieval political drama steeped in fantasy magic. It's a struggle for resources and control of populations, all revolving around gigantic magical deities called icons that are all viewed as world-ending threats if not contained. Valisthea is basically the demigod equivalent of a Cold War situation, with each powerful nation housing a threat to maintain their place in the greater scope of the world's events. It's an intriguing setting, and while the preview didn't showcase too much of the world, it was housed mostly in one specific nation, with a focus on a betrayal plot's unraveling threads. It looked pretty while doing so. The environment felt impressive even with a lack of interactable elements, and Torgal doubles as a functional waypoint that can be called upon whenever Clive gets lost. Little touches like that show off how much thought has gone into this iteration of Final Fantasy, and FF16 gets it right in a lot of ways. Of course, the main attraction and point of worry is Final Fantasy XVI's combat, which was displayed on 3 distinct levels during the preview. First, there is regular combat between Clive, his party, Torgal, and less important mobs of enemy characters. This felt fun and floaty, with a focus on chaining combos of moves together and receiving support from whoever is available to help blitz through combat. A dodge and parry system are married together for those who feel confident in their action timings, but difficulty is not a concern, more on that later. Then, there's Clive versus an icon, a man versus a monster, and the scale to match. This battle felt much more hopeless to begin with, before the flow of combat was slowly unveiled through repeated progressions, making it a satisfying boss fight more in line with what players might expect coming from something like Final Fantasy XV or even FF14. The atmosphere was intense and absorbing, and the combat was immensely fun. Icon, which will be a varied experience across FF16. In an interview with Naoki Yoshida, Hiroshi Takai, Ryota Suzuki, and Michael Christopher Koji Fox, the team explained that Final Fantasy XVI Icon battles would have a different feel for each one. Our preview showcased Garuda versus Ifrit, which felt like 2 piloted mech suits in a brutal war against each other. Limbs were lost, visceral punches exchanged, and the end result was a battlefield strewn with debris that felt like it had just hosted a gargantuan wrestling match. The most important thing about the Final Fantasy XVI hands-on preview was that every version of combat felt both distinct from the others and enjoyable. It's promising that this early into the game being played by critics, it already feels both polished and refined. The nature of the combat kept things exciting, with button prompts to escape from cinematic-style finishers balanced by an ability to hot swap between combat styles as Clive and customize the field of battle on the fly. For those worried about these Final Fantasy XVI fights being challenging, and they definitely can be, the development team has already anticipated this and come up with an excellent solution. Timely accessories are available from the beginning of the game and can be equipped to alter how combat is handled. For instance, the Ring of Timely Assistance gives players an on-screen dodge prompt to avoid attacks, simplifying a system that feels rewarding to learn but may be overwhelming from those unfamiliar with action combat. Naturally, there's a lot of Final Fantasy XVI we haven't seen yet. This hands-on preview barely scratches the surface of what has been displayed in trailers, but all the same, there's so much to look forward to with Square Enix's latest chapter in Final Fantasy. If the biggest concern for many was Final Fantasy XV's combat, those fears can be put to rest. The game is fun and has the nuance to appeal to a wide variety of potential players. With the pedigree of its dev team and its excellent innovations, it's hard to see a world where the final release of Final Fantasy XVI isn't one of the year's best, and we're thrilled to experience more of Valisthea as soon as possible. Final Fantasy XVI releases on June 22, 2023 for PlayStation 5. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and support my channel.